MarTechTalk, the live webinar with no presentations, no PowerPoint, just talk.
Well, hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Whatever your time zone, welcome. This is MarTechTalk, and I am your host, Kevin Crane. Welcome to the show. We are here today talking about maximizing revenue through smarter use of customer data and a customer data platform. A customer data platform is a powerful tool that can help us maximize revenue by leveraging our customer data more effectively. There are lots of ways to do this, but one is certainly by having a more complete view of your customer by integrating data from various sources like your CRM, your website, social media, and so forth. You can create a comprehensive customer profile that provides an ability to construct and execute more personalized and effective marketing campaigns. And this is a subject that we've been covering here in recent episodes of MarTech Talk. Some of the important techniques are segmentation, grouping customers based on common characteristics, and then targeting specific segments with relative content and offers and so forth. And then once we have customers on board, good customer data and a good customer data platform, along with some strategic planning, can lead to strategies that keep customers coming back. Things like loyalty programs and personalized incentives to retain and nurture valuable customers, all built upon data. Even identifying at-risk customers and working to keep them engaged and retained before they leave. All of this is strengthened and enabled by great data and great data management in real time, which is really possible today, including things like automation or AI-assisted processes that work with human agents to trigger personalized messages and recommendations and offers during customer interactions. And even in a purely online environment, these same capabilities and strategies can deliver really a superior customer service and customer experience across all channels and touch points that really make a difference. And look, when paired with things like predictive analytics, where we use historical data to forecast future customer behavior, identifying high-value customers and enabling us to design our marketing strategies based upon these insights, well, all of this is really very powerful, leveraging data in ways that really matter. So how do you do it? That's what we'll be discussing today with a great panel of guests. How can we maximize our revenue through the smarter use of a customer data platform? Which metrics matter most? And what are some best practices in data management and systems integration that we should consider? So all of that in today's session with a great bunch of guests. So stand by in just a moment. But as always, I want to say that we want to hear from you too. I'd like to encourage everyone attending today to participate. So please join in with your comments in the chat section. And if you have a question along the way for our guests, please enter them into the chat feature. That's where we'll be looking, and I will attempt to get some of your questions into the flow of the show today. And we'll have a few minutes also at the end for your questions. So with that, let's bring aboard our guests today, starting with Priyal Borole. Priyal, are you with us?
Hey, Kevin. Yes,
Hello,
I'm here.
Priyal.
Can you hear me?
Now, we are so happy to have Priyal back with us. You've been with us before. Priyal is the Vice President and Director of MarTech and Communications Delivery at One Main Financial. Where are you calling in from today, Priyal?
Baltimore, Maryland.
Baltimore, Maryland. Welcome aboard. It is so great to have you back. Also with us is Nagendra Shukla. Nagendra, are you with us?
Thank
Hello.
you.
Nagendra, welcome aboard. Nagendra is co-founder of Unbound. Where are you calling in from, Nagendra?
I'm calling in from San Francisco, California.
San Francisco. Oh, yes. I love the Bay Area. I spent 5 years down there myself and miss it terribly. So welcome aboard, Nagendra. Also joining us today is Ron Gerlach. Ron, are you with us?
I am, Kevin. Nice to meet you.
Well, hello, Ron. It is nice to meet you too. Ron is the CMO of Galbert Oil in South Louisiana. Welcome aboard, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. It should be an interesting discussion. To get us started, I'd like to draw our attention to an article published recently by CDO Trends that talks about personalization and how Gen AI is potentially revolutionizing that and revolutionizing the way that we can build better customer experiences. Now, of course, today, customers are they're expecting more personalized experiences, but often legacy systems, siloed data makes it difficult for most companies to do that, or many companies to do that. But generative AI has the potential to change all that. And the article is focused in financial services, but really all industry segments can benefit. Talks about research from Forrester that found that half of consumers wished that their organizations were more proactive about actually advising them. More than half, for example, wanted their financial providers to alert them to issues that might impact their financial health. This extends also to things like healthcare and others. So my question to the group is, what do you feel the impact of generative AI is and will be when it comes to making smarter use of customer data, driving things like personalization and superior experiences? How do you feel Gen AI will be used in this way? Nagendra, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think this article is bang on. You know, the B2B and B2C strategies of marketing are eventually moving to B2Me. And you have to understand the meaning of hyper-personalization. It's not just knowing my name, hi, Nagendra, back, welcome back and stuff like that. I as a user, I'm looking more for for you to grab my interest rather than grab my attention. So if I'm interested in something, then I am more willing to spend time, engage, or make purchase decisions. I know of many organizations that have used actually ML and AI to enable some very basic use cases like, best offer, next best offer, you may also like, or propensity scoring. But with the Gen AI, to your question, I think it changes the game in terms of creating that scale, right? Yes, let's say we know about our customer, but how do we create that personalized experience for them? It was very hard prior to Gen AI to actually create one by one, the segment of one customer experience. And that Gen AI would make it possible to create content copy that is tailored for a particular segment or even for individual, right? So I think Gen AI from the Gen AI marketers would benefit when they need to create content based on profile of a customer. And that brings us to the CDP. So where do we get the profile? CDP.
So it sounds to me, Nagendra, like you're talking about things that we've been pursuing for a while, but now more enabled by Gen AI. Priyal, is that your experience too at One Main Financial? And this article talks about financial services in particular. What were your thoughts about it?
Yeah, so most of my time has been in financial services, and I think we have been using, like, not just here, but every financial company tries to do some use cases, and they are pretty basic. Like Nagendra was saying, it's pretty basic that you could enable some of those things for a selected few use cases, which will be handled flawlessly, even from marketing and servicing standpoint. But when it comes to Gen AI and maintaining that balance between a human behavior and a bot responding to something is a key to address, and there is much work to be done, right? Even if it's an implementation that requires a lot of fine tuning to it, right? So it's deploying this is not going to get value in probably just a matter of month or so. I think it will take some time to run through some modeling and scoring as well to make sure it's maintaining that balance and continued somebody's reviewing that, right? So there is a benefit out of it, but there is a concern as well from privacy and regulation standpoint that we have to be very cautious about.
Well, and we may get into that here in a moment, but Ron, you are from oil and gas. What is your perspective on Gen AI, and what are your thoughts about this article too? Do you believe some of the benefits will transfer over into your industry as well?
Oh, absolutely. And we're already seeing it. I mean, I go back to what Nagendra said, personalization at scale is going to be critical for this. AI can tailor recommendations, content, and interactions to individual preferences. But not only that, you've got predictive analysis it can anticipate customers' needs. You can enhance customer service through generative AI and actually give real-time feedback and adaptation. We can analyze and gather customer feedback now in real time, allowing us to adapt much quicker to the customer's needs and the preferences. So it really is changing the game across B2B, regardless of the business verticals or the business segments.
And the convergence of all of these things is really changing the game, or has the potential to change the game. And Ron, you've brought up, you've taken us where our first discussion point takes us today, and that is analyzing customer behavior, using data, as you mentioned, predictive analysis, and really using customer data in ways that really move the needle. So let's go to our first discussion point today, and that is about customer data. Does it need to be in a single location to do all of this? What are the challenges in analyzing buyer behavior and using things like predictive analytics? And Ron, you brought it up. What are your thoughts on that? And what are you folks doing?
Well, we always try to gather it in one location, but really, I think you have to understand the whole process to being personalities and buyer personalities and preferences are pretty diverse. They've got they've got varying taste, preferences, personalities, and it can really make it a challenge to develop a one-size-fits-all type of analysis approach. So what we have to do is really pay attention to what the data is showing us, and understand that we don't need to get locked in to one viewpoint or one stance, that we have to be willing to adapt as we see changes, evolving trends, and different market dynamics.
Nikendra, what is your take on using customer data in this way and predictive analysis, trying to understand potential customers, potential customer behavior? You've worked in e-commerce, MarTech, ad tech. What's your perspective on this, and what are some best practices you might suggest for us to get that job done?
Yeah. Just taking the thread from Ron, right? Talking about that agility to be able to adjust to how the behaviors are changing, or how technology, or how the devices, there are many variables right now, and geographic variables where bandwidth might be less, some variables where bandwidth might be more, and stuff like that. So understanding that. But one thing I want to take us back to is tools don't solve the problem. Tools are just the means to actually solve the problem through strategy, right? So we got to have that strategy, especially for tools like CDP, right? CDP is not a customer-facing tool. CDP is a middleware. And middleware has to have a lot of thoughts that have gone into it in terms of understanding. So even before we put CDP in, we have to think about what is our customer life cycle, what are customer life stages. Sometimes some businesses serve customers at different life stages. Some businesses serve them on impulse buying or just e-commerce, right? So we need to understand that. And then we need to understand where all these disparate data sources are, because it is absolutely not possible that every organization will have, or any organization will have, homogeneous data sources. They will have disparate. It doesn't matter where you go, right? Then legacy data. The companies have been operating for many, many, many years, so they have a lot of legacy data. Then data normalization issues come up. So all of these things have to be first thought through, how I'm going to do it, and then we get into CDP, that this is going to look like my customer profile. One of the practice we used to do at McAfee was we used to look at North Star customer, right? What is a North Star customer, and what are those attributes look like? So let's say if there are 20 attributes or 50 attributes, I need to know all of them. That's my North Star. Now the gap becomes what is not there. And that's where we start to figure out how the CDP can fill the gaps. Where can we bring the data? Let's say I figured out of 20, I have 15. 5 needs to be brought in. Now, where are those 5? Are those in offline? Are those in online? Are they in social? Are they in my own database or our partner database? Stuff like that. So once we have figured that out, then we can start to enrich, because CDP's beauty is not only just to store and make the data available. Its beauty is also to continuously enrich the data. As I understand, as I learn more about the customer, I start to add those parameters to the profile.
So it all starts with understanding the data that you have, where it's located, may not be centralized, and then really looking for the gaps in where is needed to make the most of that data. Priyal, taking off on where Nagendra took us, we need to have a strategy with this data. What are some strategic aspects that we should consider to make the most of our data and move forward in ways that really move the needle?
Yeah, so ideally, how I perceive the CDP is, coming from financial institution, it's very locked in with the data sharing approach, right? So my perception to CDP is, you have to know, like Nagendra said, you definitely have to know your customer data first before starting to utilize any CDP platform, because it's gonna be most of the time plug and play and work in your favor, and then you're gonna customize it and utilize the goodies out of it by integrating to multiple platforms, right? To understand the behavior online, maybe voice or chat and others, right? And it's gonna derive your segmentation approaches later. But I think the most important factor is, I think everybody's probably aware of something called customer 360. How do you really get to that customer 360, right? How are you and your data architecture ecosystem is coming together? Because in a lot of organizations, while they are moving towards digital transformation, but what does it really mean? There are so many data silos going on in the companies that everybody is maintaining their own data ecosystem, and they may or may not share everything when it comes to the transactional data as well, right? It's very sensitive in terms of what we can utilize, what is really from legality standpoint, what we can use for personalization as well, right? So there are boundaries that needs to be defined. From data, for your specific question on data, right? I think what have been successful in the past that we have proven out is making sure we have a robust model that's continuously scalable in terms of creating a single unified view for your customer, right? You might be a multi-product company, but you need to have in mind that how do I represent that, and then go to CDP and start to leverage the benefits out of it, right? And the challenges are mostly when there are internal challenges company has to face as well. There is a cultural shift that has to happen in the technology, and from customer standpoint as well, we have to kind of make sure how we are really using that data and for executional purposes. There are things that Ron talked about, preferences and privacy concerns. They are they get into challenging scenarios for execution purposes, right? So from that standpoint, I would really enforce on data quality, availability, and those aspects to be figured out from foundational perspective. And there are other challenges always going to be there, such as how do you figure out your identity resolution? How do you figure out maybe customer behavior that's happening offline or across the platform? So which are continued evolution that's as a practice we need to take up.
Kevin, if I can piggyback real quick on something that Priyal just said, I think it's true that you have to be principled in how you're using and how you view this data as well, because you can go down the rabbit hole of data overload real quick. And in doing so, you can find yourself trying to become everything to everyone. And you have to stay consistent, know who you are, what you're doing, what you're offering, and what makes you unique, and then look for ways to solve the customer's issues from what the data shows you. Otherwise, you try to become everything to everyone and you become nothing. I mean, data overload is an issue that we have to deal with now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that brings up an interesting point, I think, Ron, and it's what data is only as good as the benefit that it brings you. Either you don't have it when you need it, or you have too much of it and it's not really providing any value, so you're spending a lot of time and energy collecting data and securing data that really doesn't move the needle in terms of organizational performance. And I think that sort of brings us to our discussion point of number 2. When it comes to a customer data platform and the technologies and the efforts behind all of that, which metrics matter most when proving the value or the ROI of a customer data platform and all the technologies and infrastructure needed to support it? Any thoughts on that, gentlemen? I mean, Ron, what metrics do you suggest would be the most valuable?
Well, a lot of that I think depends on the individual business and what they're what they're selling, who they're selling to, what their customers, who their customers are. I think in our case, we probably, because we have a product and a service that is such a longer sales cycle. Primarily, I'm looking at CLV, customer lifetime value, customer acquisition cost, retention rates. Those are, for me anyway, those are the primary 3 areas I'm looking at, because it's always in the oil and gas distribution business and in lubricants, it's always easier for us to expand in our current customer base and more profitable for us than it is to go out and acquire new customers. So, like I said, those would be the 3 primary areas I focus on. But that's going to be unique and different across the board depending on what the business is.
Well, and the important point is to make that connective tissue happen. Nagendra, I mean, it's one to have a key performance indicator, but it's another to link what we do and the technologies directly to that. I think that's a tricky thing that can often cause a gap in that process. Nagendra, how do you approach that?
Yeah, so I think Ron kind of brought it up in his previous comment, and probably he didn't say exact word, but it's the customer empathy, right? How do we solve customer problems before we actually look at how it can solve our problem? Because solving the idea behind hyper-personalization is making sure we are presenting the right things to the customer at the right time, right? So that's where the crux of the problem is, that, hey, understanding the customer, and that's what we're talking about, creating the customer profile. What are the challenges? What can we solve? And what can we solve through CDP, right? Now coming to the metrics that are most important. Ron already mentioned all of the marketing metrics can be associated either directly or indirectly to how CDP is performing, right? We can look at those metrics: LTV, CLV, average order value, and loyalty and NPS and all of that stuff. But I think there's few more that I specifically look at, and where it's timely availability of relevant profile attributes. Because if an attribute takes longer time to get to a marketer, by the time user has made a purchase decision, doesn't matter, right? So can it make it available in time for them, either real time or near real time, for them to make the right suggestions, to make the right experience, to make the right engagement content or copy and stuff like that. The second part is right data available to right channel at the right time. So time we already discussed, but through right channel, right? If I want to do, from a preference point of view, if I know some of my customers are like to be reached on mobile or push notification, then is that data available through my push notification channel? Is that data available through my SMS channel? So that is also important to me. And the third thing is the profile enrichment, which I already brought up before, and the completion, which is also sometimes called recognition ratio, right? If I have like 1 million contacts, and how many of them are fully recognized, how many of them are partially recognized, and so on and so forth. So you can actually create a spectrum, a graph of that recognition ratio, which will show you that, hey, out of 1 million, 10,000 of them are just cookie. 500,000 of them you have email IDs. 200,000 of them you have email IDs and SMS and push notification handle. So those kind of things would matter to me from a middleware metrics point of view, because nobody's seeing the CDP, if you will, right? CDP is like, we assume it's there, it should be doing its job. So what do I measure? These are some of the things I would measure at middleware level.
Well, that's it. Those are really powerful measurements, Nagendra. I mean, be there first and be there where you should be or where your customers are. If those were your only two metrics, and you worked them hard with the technology and the automation and Gen AI and data-driven systems, I can only imagine what the improvements might be. Priyal, do you agree with Ron and Nagendra on these measurements? What are some other metrics that are most important when really measuring the value and ROI of our customer data platform?
Yeah, I agree with both of them. I think there are some streamlined engagement metrics that applies to every industry. Like, you can look at your campaign performance or your click-through rate and conversion, right?
Okay.
There are so many reports out of the box that provides the engagement scores and time on site, and so I would really divide it into two different categories and make it accountable for people who are really owning this, right? From business standpoint, business are really interested into LTV or the retention rates and how we are really reducing any net credit losses in terms of financial industries, because a lot of these banks and credit card operations or mortgage and loans, they are heavy on collection scenarios where they need to make sure they are paying attention to those metrics of net credit loss. And from acquisitions perspective, how do we really go out there and utilize the multi-channel platform, which is backed up by CDP, and we are orchestrating a journey, right? So how that journey is performing and how am I really able to read all that together? So there is a thread connected to the technology leaders as well. They need to focus on metrics, which I do, and I enable my peers as well. We need to be really looking at the data security, compliance, how we are really compliant in terms of any data integrations, any customer data accuracy, SLAs around our data integrations. Like, I like the use case that Nagendra said. We have had that several times, right? So, and we continuously try to improve our SLA on that piece, that, hey, if I am really creating an identity graph, am I able to really implement it very well? Like, there is a Kevin, and then Kevin might be using 5 different devices. He might be making purchases on app, or maybe he is visiting something similar, but he hasn't purchased it. So how am I able to tie all that activity together and try to predict the next best offer for him or next best action for him, right? So that is a key really from SLA technological standpoint, that, hey, we need to keep improving upon and execute based on that.
Look, these are all super powerful techniques and strategies, and I really am feeling the linkage today between MarTechTalk and our sister show, Digital Transformation Talk, because really, if you're looking to achieve success with digital transformation, here is the area where I think you can move the needle, because we're talking about customers and market share and sales. It's not arbitrary transformation. This is real business performance transformation. Yeah. So some great techniques and thoughts today. We are here today with Priyal Boroli, Vice President and Director of MarTech and Communications Delivery at OneMain Financial. Also, Nagendra Shukla, co-founder of Unbound, and Ron Gerlach, CMO of Gaubert Oil. And we're talking about maximizing revenue through the smarter use of your customer data platform. Look, if you have a question for one of our guests today, please do enter that into the chat feature. Let's take advantage of their real-world expertise, and we will attempt to get them into the flow of the show. And we'll have a few minutes here in just a little bit for your questions. All right, gentlemen, let's move on today to our third discussion point. And really, that is, we're talking about a customer data platform, but the trick is really integrating that into our systems and processes. So looking for suggestions about integrating a customer data platform into your MarTech strategies and infrastructure to really maximize the revenues that it can bring. Ron, what has been your experience on this sort of more technical side? And do you have any suggestions for organizations looking for a better integration?
Yeah, I would stress two of them right off the bat.
Please.
Very first, define your objectives. Make sure that you have clear objectives on what you want to achieve with the CDP integration. Whether that's improving customer segmentation, personalization, customer journey mapping, enhancing your overall marketing strategy. Just be clear on what you want to achieve with it. Number one. Number two, by all means, make sure that your data is good quality and consistent. Make sure it's clean, it's comprehensive, and continue on it. Check it every so often. I would say there are others, but those are really the two that, without that foundation, you're really going to struggle moving forward with anything else.
Ron, I would imagine your relationship as CMO with the CIO is a really important one, because you're looking at the same systems perhaps from a different point of view. You're talking about data quality and integration. So culturally, how important is that relationship?
Oh, it's vital. And in fact, I have said for a couple of years now that, not to take away anything from the CIO, but really a CMO's role is really moving more toward a CTO, a Chief Technology Officer, because I think, just the proliferation of data and being able to understand how to use it from a marketing role, you're really more of a technology officer at this point, because it is really, I don't mean this in a bad way, but it really eats up most of your time at this point. You see a lot more, you see now and will see in the future a lot more CMOs become CXOs, Chief Experience Officers, because the marketing and the experience portions go together so well with the use of data, that it's really much more than just the marketing aspect. It really is the whole integrated approach to the before, during, and after portion of marketing. So to go back to your question, yes, myself and the CIO work hand in hand, almost on a daily basis, with the MarTech stacks and the programs that we use, and really we're almost becoming one person at this point.
Maybe that's not a good thing.
Well, it's inevitable.
I think it is inevitable, I think, and you're right to point out the evolving and sort of gray areas between these what have been traditional roles. Nagendra, is that your experience as well across MarTech, AdTech, e-commerce? Yeah. And what are your suggestions for ensuring proper integration of our customer data platform?
Yeah, I think right on. Ron is right on, and the point that you mentioned about the intertwined relationship between digital transformation and MarTech or marketing technologies and AdTech is, and you really see that intertwining right here, right? When you're talking about ingress of data, right? How do I bring the data? That's right into the digital transformation that you just talked about, right? How do you have scripts? Do you have data lake? Do you have Kafka? Do you have, queues where people can pick up the data that they are interested in from? And do you actually have a city map of your databases in your organization, right? There are organizations that have millions and millions of customers and hundreds of thousands of employees. How do you make sure that you have the view that where is what first, right? And then the second part is the processing and normalization of data, because now we know that not all data is real-time data. So typically what has worked in past for me in different organizations is that you go with the rule that offline if you can, real-time if you must, because real-time is always expensive, right? So you have to pick and choose. You cannot have all 100 attributes or 50 attributes of a profile in real time. We need to make sure that what is absolutely needed in real time, what is absolutely needed to put a, exit intent box, or what is absolutely needed to put a you may also like. Where are the real-time data requirements? And that's what we have to decide in the processing and normalization step. And the third thing, which is equally important and maybe a lot more important than everything else, is that egress of data going to the orchestration systems. Now, what orchestration systems I have? You would say email is an orchestration system. You'd say SMS. You'd say push notification. It could be Google, where you are sending for your customer ads and paid media, or Facebook or Pinterest. Wherever that is going, how do I make sure that those integrations are in place and CDP is able to do that well in order to make those channels most efficient? So three things: ingress of data, processing, and egress of data. Three things are most important in making sure that integration is right.
Nagendra, I think you make a great point with the processing that you were talking about. Online, if you can, real time when you must. Can you give us an example real quick of when real time is a must in a certain application?
So like customer profile, every time you don't need to bring all the attributes, right? Because you know some things about the customer. Customer is, a certain name, certain address, certain zip code, certain email IDs and stuff like that. But then there are some real-time attributes that when they are clicking something, like last time what I ordered, right? That doesn't need to be real time. It can come from my transaction database, right? So that those are all offline. But what I'm doing on the site right now, that has to have a sub 300 millisecond response time. Like if I am personalizing a web experience as I am browsing through site, then that experience needs to be sub 300 milliseconds, because that's what the web
Okay.
page would expect. If the website is fast, it would expect that, hey, tell me what I bought last time so I don't show you the same product again, or tell me what is the next best offer so I can show you that list of those products.
All right, Priyal, where do you come down on this? What are your suggestions and strategies, that best practices that we should consider when we are integrating our CDP into our MarTech?
Yeah, the key ones actually overlap with what Ron and Nagendra was saying. I would double down on your data completeness, right? Mapping the data sources, figuring out what is a unified customer profile for your organization is, and mapping those data sources in terms of what your needs are, right? Um, from batch and real-time standpoint, regardless of a use case, I think a lot of companies are already very much into campaigns, so they know what they need to execute the campaigns. But I think while stepping into the future of using AI with CDP and journey orchestration and all of those, utilizing a third-party services as well to plug and play, I think the business and technology is one entity, need to work as a one entity, right? We need to define that what are the MarTech tools that we need to select in terms of a multi-year journey for implementation, right? So this ties to what are the key goals that your organization have in terms of getting to, right? So use cases. That's why I'm kind of pinpointing on that, and that's really helps us in terms of launching and getting first things out of the door, right? So that's gonna be my couple points that really defines your strategic piece, working with technology and working with marketing operations and figuring out how's your path forward from a channel to another channel, and figuring out the whole customer experience. If I am online or if I'm getting this email, what are my buyer behaviors? How is my demographic in general? If I'm leveraging any demo or third-party data, right? There are several industries actually leverage third-party data to evaluate how really Priyal is, right? From my experience with the company or my other experience or my other activities from demographics, right? And then third one, I would say from there, we have to really figure out the behavioral triggers and automation from real-time standpoints, because a lot of the interactions that happen in financial services or bank, they start with a text, and I think the trend is changing. People don't want to talk on phone anymore. They just they won't pick up the call. I think compared to 3-4 years before, how much have you been picking some calls from unknown number, right? So people don't want to talk with somebody. They just want to text you and get that figured out, right? So there is a multi-channel path from there, whether they want to pay on the credit card or they want to work on something to push out the payment, right? I'm just giving some examples that really helps from evaluating that in a real-time mode. When somebody's chatting with you, how are you really able to utilize any data APIs that will help that AI to answer some questions and then plug in a real person to keep that balance, right? It may eventually land on some journey, but that's where something I think companies are heading towards.
Fantastic. All right, Priyal, Nagendra, and Ron, we have come to the question and answer and the action item round of our program today. We do have a question here coming in from Claire. I'll put it out to all three of you really quickly to answer Claire's question. What are your top tips for maximizing the platform's effectiveness? Priyal, do you have a quick tip on that?
Yeah, so I think from technological standpoint, the platform effectiveness really comes from your foundational integrations, right? Like the data or any real-time integration that you're doing with any other system, such as your analytical engine, your modeling, scoring, if you are really using that in your customer journey. And the piece that I mentioned about the SLA, I think Nagendra also mentioned about the time sensitiveness around execution of data, right? So those are some effective practices I would really try to delve into regarding your use cases that you're trying to leverage on.
Very good. All right. Nagendra, do you have an action item or a tip to help us maximize our platforms? Yes.
I think same thing kind of I will reiterate, and we talked about this point, timely availability of the profile attributes in the right channel. That is what I think would make that more efficient, especially if you're a marketer. If I don't know if Claire's job, role is marketing, but for marketers, that's what matters the most. I have the data when I need it.
So can I actually add one more point? I think there is a step-by-step procedure, right, which have been very effective. So there is a platform that we create, and then there is an activation of the platform and the enablement of the platform, right? So people work together to do this, obviously, and marketers use of it, right? But in many organizations, whenever you're trying to deploy some things while using effectively, you want to use this platform. But I'll tell you, in financial organizations, you cannot just go ahead and deploy something, obviously with others as well, that it has the legality challenges of what verbiage you are trying to use, right? What copies you are trying to use. So are they approved by legal? So you really need to have your procedures and processes in place as well, so that you're effectively using your platform and not getting blocked by some of the such things.
Logistics,
Fantastic. All right. And Ron, please, can you give us one quick action item that we can use to take advantage of the ideas and advice today?
Oh, wow, that's hard. The action item really that I always go back to, and I always recommend to anyone, regardless of what company they're in, is really the foundational piece of it. Understand what your objectives are. Know what you want to accomplish. Know what you want to get out of what you're doing marketing, and what MarTech stacks or what MarTech processes you're using. Once you have those objectives clear, then you can move forward with what you want to use, how you want to use it, what you're looking for. Without that, you're just adding toys to the mix that it really is going to be very, very difficult to put everything together and get some kind of actionable data out of.
Very good. That is Ron Gerlach from Galbert Oil, also Nagendra Shukla from Unbound, and Priyal Borole from OneMain Financial. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us today. What a great panel. Your perspectives and advice were really spot on. Thank you so much. I hope we get a chance to talk again soon. And to everyone joining us today, thank you too. We appreciate you being here with us. This is our last session for the year, and indeed we will be taking a short winter break, but certainly join us in spring of 2024 when we will return and we will talk with more great guests about MarTech and MarTechTalk. Meanwhile, if you'd like to find me, you can do so on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect there. Check me out. I'm Kevin Crane, and check out my weekly audio podcast, Everyday MBA. So that'll do it for this episode of MarTechTalk. And until next time, I am Kevin Crane. Thank you so much for watching.
Awesome.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Kevin.